Watch your San Diego State Aztecs take on the Cal State Fullerton Titans. December 8th at 7 p.m., live from the Viejas Arena.
Welcome to another episode of Left Coast Sports with Jon Schaeffer. We're very excited to have Team Mazda of El Cajon as a sponsor here at Left Coast Sports. Team Mazda, where your trade-in is always worth more, just off I-8 in El Cajon. If you're a fan of San Diego State football or basketball, you know these are exciting times on the Mesa. The Aztecs basketball program has been among the nation's best over the last 2 decades and is off to a good start this year. And then you have Aztecs football once again vying for a conference title. And today I'll be joined by Andre Haghverdian from the East Village Times. We'll talk some San Diego State football and hoops. Andre's done a wonderful job with his coverage of all things Aztec, so has the East Village Times. So if you like San Diego State, I think you'll really enjoy our conversation today. But as always, before we get started with today's episode, please give us an auto download on your podcast platform. You'll get future episodes that way automatically. Left Coast Sports is on most podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, the free iHeartRadio app, YouTube, Spotify, and others. You can leave a review as well. And while you're here and listening, if you wouldn't mind just switching over to Twitter and following me there at Jon Schaeffer. That's JONSCHAEFFER at Jon Schaeffer. So where do things stand for San Diego State with the football team vying for a conference title and the basketball team hoping for another trip to the NCAA tournament? Here's my conversation with Andre. Just in general, when you look at the state of San Diego State's football program, what they've had to overcome these last couple of years playing in Carson, and we know they're heading for the new stadium. What impresses you most about what they've been able to accomplish considering the circumstances of these last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, Brady Hoke mentioned it in his press conference that, they're not really playing any home games, and that, the 2-hour travel, getting on a bus is definitely is a challenge to the players because it's kind of something out of the norm for them. So just, last year they struggled towards the end of the season. They had some winnable games, weren't able to finish. I think the most impressive thing this year is finishing games. They've won 2 double overtime games, one against Utah, which is a top 25 college football playoff ranked team. The games against obviously Nevada recently and San Jose State and things like that. And I think what's impressive is the way that they've gotten down in games. They've gotten down early, late, but they've been able to bounce back and figure out a way to win games. And that's been, key.
It's amazing, too. I mean, the consistency of the defense. It's easy to say, hey, you're going to be a physical unit or you're going to stop the run. And that's another thing to actually do it. And, San Diego State's top 10 in the country in terms of points allowed per game, fewest points allowed, and top 5 in rushing yards allowed, and top 10 in total defense. When you think about it from that side of the equation, the job that Brady Hoke has done, his staff, and before Hoke, of course, Rocky Long and his staff, it really is remarkable, the defensive success, the sustained defensive success they've had these last handful of years.
Yeah, you don't see when there's a new coaching change with a team, how the team is able to pick up right where they left off. And, a lot of that is some of that familiarity, obviously, with, the coaching staff and the system. But obviously it's a new face, new voice, and the defense has just been able to tug along. When I preview upcoming opponents, I always try to go back and listen to the opposing coach's press conference. And every coach, every year, every week this year, they talk about how physical the defense is, how smart they play, and how they execute. And that's a testament to obviously the coaches, but the players buying in.
Cameron Thomas, has had big game after big game. Considered one of the best defensive end prospects maybe in all of college football. We'll see if he elects to come out or not after this junior year. What is it to you that sticks out most about Cam Thomas when you watch him play?
His motor. He plays with a lot of effort. He rarely takes plays off. Obviously, this recent game against Nevada, I mean, he was running around. Carson Strong was running out of the pocket, trying to buy time, and Cam was running after him. He got one script sack that the ball went out of bounds, but it was like right near the out of bounds line. So his motor, he's strong too, deceptively strong. Sometimes I watch him go up against left tackles that are, bigger, stronger, faster than him, and he doesn't seem to get stymied at the line. He's able to break free. So he's got a high motor, and he knows how to play the game. He's been taught well, he's been coached well, and he's progressed in his 3 years at San Diego State.
It's not just Thomas on that defensive line. You think about the production they're getting from a Keyshawn Banks and a Jonah Tavai, and then they're rotating more than just those 3 linemen in, even in a 3-3-5. When you think about the defense overall, is it starting up front? I mean, is that where they have the majority of their success?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think all 3 of them, the starters, do a great job with what they're asked to do. The secondary had 3 new starters this year, and I think that was the biggest defensive question about the team was, how's the secondary going to do? But nothing helps the secondary more than having a great pass rush that can, so the secondary doesn't have to cover longer than they typically have to. And I think without the front 3, the secondary would not be as successful as they have been.
This offense, I think, has improved since 2020. I think there are those that believe that there's still room for growth as well. But with that being said, obviously, San Diego State has had all of this success. When you look at the offense, and specifically Lucas Johnson, what have you seen from Lucas in terms of his growth, and what are some areas of growth that you think could still continue here in the final couple of games, potentially of the year?
Yeah, I think lately, especially in the last 2 weeks, his just being more decisive. A lot of times, especially on the pass plays, was that he would miss the first opening. Sometimes he would hold on to the ball longer than he should, or would pump fake and miss receivers. And by the time he would come back around, other receivers wouldn't necessarily be open. I think he's just been more decisive. He's found a nice connection with Elijah Cody the last couple weeks, on some comeback routes, on some back shoulder throws. The 4th down play to Jesse Matthews was a kind of a quick slant. That's not a play he's completed very much this year. So for them to call that play and for him to have the confidence to throw it, I think was shows how much he's improved since, not just the beginning of this year, but even from last year.
We talk so much about quarterbacks and even the tailbacks, and specifically Greg Bell. I don't know if we talk enough about the offensive line, which I also think has been an improved unit for this team this year. What do you think of the offensive line play they've had?
I think the beginning of the season, they were great. They had some kind of performances where the running game didn't get going. And a lot of people look to the offensive line to say, well, the offensive line isn't doing their job or isn't playing well. But some of that is also who they're playing. San Jose State, Fresno State, they've got some great people up front, great defensive tackles. And the running game might have not going, but they necessarily didn't give up many sacks. So I think the offensive line has definitely been one of the stronger units on the offense all season. And we'll see how they do over the next couple of weeks against some of the teams that they'll be playing.
And then there's special teams and Matt Araiza, and it's hard to really describe the impact and imprint he's had on football games for San Diego State this year. I know Brady Hoke has said at times he's the team's MVP. Would you agree with that?
I would say so, yeah. The nickname Punt God didn't, come out of thin air. The field position battle has been huge, especially for a team that's built around defense and controlling the ball. Field position is vital, and being able to flip the field, pin teams back inside the 10, that's been vital. And I think, kicking field goals, obviously he made 3 field goals recently, including the game winner. He's hit a couple 50-yard field goals throughout the season. They haven't kicked a lot of field goals this year, so his field goal numbers aren't that high. But there's not a lot to be said for being able to flip the field position, and pinning teams back and letting your defense kind of have that edge without always having a short field or things to defend.
Could you see him getting Heisman votes, a punter at San Diego State getting Heisman votes?
I can see him getting votes. I don't necessarily think he's going to be in the top 4 and get invited to the ceremony.
Sure.
I would think that the typical voter would dismiss a punter because of how few times the punter is on the field. Let's say between a punter, kicking, and kickoffs, they're probably on the field for 10 plays, 10 times a game. And I think a lot of the mainstream voters are going to discount even a punter that's made broken records and had a historic season, I don't see a lot of voters giving an accolade to that over, a running back, a quarterback, or a defensive player.
As good as Araiza has been on special teams, I feel like getting lost in the shuffle is Jordan Byrd, who's obviously in the special teams unit, kick returns, punt returns. He's been really good this year. I thought he set up that final drive against Nevada, that game we've referenced a couple times as well. Jordan Byrd, has he been among the more underappreciated / valuable players for the Aztecs this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think he had one fumbled punt where a defender bumped into him early in the season. Wasn't his fault, but otherwise he hasn't had any issues this year with fumbles. Returning kickoffs has been great. I think kickoff returns have kind of gone by the wayside now with the kicking deeper and a lot of touchbacks. But Jordan Byrd's been able to bring the ball out and give the Aztecs better field position than the 25. Past that, he's obviously the fastest guy in the team, probably. And in my opinion, I think he could be utilized more on offense with some bubble screens, with shovel passes, things like that. But yeah, he's definitely a key piece to the team in general.
I want to switch gears to San Diego State basketball, obviously underway. The last 2 years have been incredible, but we had the pandemic. And then last year in the NCAA tournament, but a first-round loss to Syracuse. And Brian Dutcher and his staff, I think, really challenged his team this year in terms of their non-conference schedule. Games like BYU and Arizona State and Michigan and St. Mary's and potentially an SC or a Georgetown. What do you make of the schedule that Dutch and his staff have put together to challenge his team this year?
It's great. I think if you ask any player, they want to play the best. And when you go to a non-Power 5 school or a non-major conference, sometimes you may not play the best. And to have a coach and a program that wants to schedule and has the confidence in the team to schedule a Michigan and schedule some of the teams that they're playing this year, I think as a player, you have to love it. As a fan, love it even more. Have the opportunities to see your team go up against some of the better teams, better programs in the country. And it challenges the team. I think players get up for those games and they know that they have to bring their A game because if they don't, they could get embarrassed on national TV. And so I think it gets your team to a higher level than you would otherwise.
Do you think ultimately they'll have the scoring to make up for the lost scoring, the Matt Mitchells and the Jordan Shackles and the Terrell Gomez's? I mean, they've brought in a lot, including Matt Bradley. And do you think they'll have enough to make up for what they lost offensively?
That's probably yet to be determined. I think they will have enough because their defense is so good. So enough necessarily doesn't have to be a ton. When you're holding teams to under 60 points, you only have to score 60 points to win the game. And so I think they have enough. They're going through obviously growing pains. They're shooting 15% from the 3-point line. That's not going to continue. There's going to be 0% chance that they're going to shoot 15% for the whole season. I don't think any team in history has shot less than, in the 20s. So we know that's going to get better. Are they going to be an elite shooting team? No, but they'll probably be in the low 30s, by the time the season is done. So I think they can score enough. They're figuring it out right now. I think Matt Bradley, where he likes the ball, his spots, figuring that in. I think they want Nathan Mensah to be more involved offensively as well. I think he's 10 for 11 through 2 games, so you can get him more shots. And so I think there's enough there. It's just a work in progress right now because they have so many new faces.
Do you think the impact of the new football stadium is going to be comparable to the impact of Viejas Arena on the basketball program?
That's an interesting question. I think it's probably a little different because when the basketball arena came in, the team was so bad. And it also coincided with Steve Fisher coming. So I think it was a global kind of Steve Fisher and the new arena. The football team is actually still is good. So the impact might not be as large to the naked eye just because the team is already good and they've got a coach in place. But I think it'll help with recruiting. I think that's the number one area when I talk to commits or recruits is, how excited they are about the new stadium and playing in that new stadium. And I think the continued winning, the new stadium can get them potentially into more 4-star recruits, in San Diego. So a lot of San Diego 4-star recruits end up leaving San Diego. And a new stadium and the excitement that the city brings may keep some of those guys in-house.
What does this incoming class look like? Because I know you cover it for the East Village Times. When you look at the football incoming class for the first year in the new Aztec Stadium, what are the strengths of the class and how well has Brady and his staff done?
They've done really well. I think they're one of the, for a non-Power 5, I think they're definitely in the top range. I think they have the number 1 Mountain West class so far, and they've had 17, I believe, commits so far. Obviously, they'll get to about 25 or so by the signing day. They've got a couple nice tight. They're mostly offensive. I've seen they've got some running backs and some good tight ends that I think that are going to be huge contributors to the offense looking forward. They do have a couple quarterbacks that have committed. They had 3. One actually ended up decommitting, but they've got 2. One's more of a pro-style quarterback from, I believe, LA. I think his name is Nick Crum. And then there's a commit from Hawaii. I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to try.
I saw that last name.
But he looks to be pretty talented as well. And obviously, if you talk to people around the Aztecs, it's all about Will Haskell next year. And that may be so, but these 2 quarterbacks I think are gonna, be in the mix as well potentially, depending on how they develop.
Will the possible expansion of the college football playoff from 4 teams to whatever it is, if it's 8 or 12, I think 12 is where it ultimately ends up, and I think that's most beneficial for the Group of 5. Will that expansion change the way the Group of 5 programs are able to hit the recruiting trail, in your opinion?
I think so, for sure. If you talk to any recruit, they want to win a championship, and in college football, it's winning, the last bowl game of the season, which is a championship game. And some people may say, well, why am I going to go to a Group 5 if I have no chance to hitting that goal? And if it's expanded and Group of 5 teams have a better shot, or actually a shot, since they don't really have as much of a shot now, Cincinnati may have something to say about that in the next couple of weeks. But I think it definitely will factor into the Group of 5's recruiting as a selling point.
Andre, for those that might not be familiar, where can we find some of your work online?
So I write and contribute for the East Village Times, eastvillagetimes.com. You can also find me on Twitter, Haghver23. And I cover mostly football, but I also do some basketball as well. So between the website, you can find not just mine, but all of our other contributors and writers' articles as well.
You guys are doing great work at the East Village Times as it relates to San Diego State. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes for us today, and continued success covering San Diego State athletics.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
All right, really enjoyed that conversation with Andre from the East Village Times. And by the way, you can catch Aztecs basketball exclusively on Your View with a couple of upcoming games in December. December 8th against Cal State Fullerton, December 28th against San Diego Christian. Again, Your View is your exclusive home for some upcoming Aztecs basketball games this December, December 8th and December 28th. If you haven't already, you can subscribe and auto-download future episodes on whichever podcast platform you're listening to this podcast on right now. Please leave a review as well, and follow me on Twitter at Jon Schaeffer. That's JONSCHAEFFER. For previous episodes or more information about Left Coast Sports, you can visit yourview.com. That's YURVIEW.com. And again, this reminder, we're thrilled to have Team Mazda of El Cajon as a sponsor here at Left Coast Sports. Team Mazda, where your trade-in is always worth more, just off I-8 in El Cajon. As always, we thank you for listening, and we'll catch up again next time right here on Left Coast Sports with Jon Schaeffer.